You can't deny that House 2 The Second Story is a genius title for a sequel movie. Welcome back, Horror Hounds, and this is my continuation of my reviews of the House franchise. So today we are going to be looking at, of course, as it says in the title, House 2 The Second Story. This is the Arrow Blu-ray from the box set that I showed you in the previous video. And as the tagline says, it gets weirder. And I promise you, as this review goes on, it certainly does. So to give you a bit of background about House 2 The Second Story, it was also produced by Sean S. Cunningham once again. After the box office success of the original 1985 film, Sean saw a window for a possible sequel. There was definitely a demand for it at the time. And he went on to challenge an upcoming writer and director, Ethan Wiley, to essentially write and direct the film and get it up on release by August of 1987. There wasn't a great deal of time for him. He was challenged to write the script within 2 weeks, which is certainly an impressive feat, but looking at the final product and the time frame he had, I think he did pretty much a tremendous job with it. A bit of context and background there on Ethan Wiley also. He did special effects on 1984's Gremlins, and as I'll explain a little bit further in this review, you'll definitely see the influence of Gremlins in this movie. Due to financial reasons, they were unable to bring back the cast from the original movie. It would have just proven too expensive. So Sean S. Cunningham then challenged Ethan Wiley to write an entirely new story. Everything had to be different. So even though it is a sequel to House, it is a part of the franchise. It's not a direct sequel in terms of the narrative. I think that is a lot more inventive. I feel that, judging by the first House movie, the story of Roger Cobb was wrapped up nicely, all loose ends were tied up. So I think doing something completely new characters and all that was quite a fresh take on the franchise, and yeah, it worked really well. So he was going for the more anthology vibe rather than just repeating the story of Roger. Maybe he got a new house, more demons showed up. I think this is definitely a more creative way to go. So House 2 The Second Story centres on a young man named Jesse. The film opens up in a flashback sequence which sees his parents give him up as a baby, and they are living in this really grand gothic mansion. I think it's a scale up from the house in the original movie. It looks absolutely lavish. It's a beautiful house. I would absolutely love to live there myself, to be honest. So they give him up as a baby, and then they are murdered by a mysterious entity within the house. The movie then goes forward 25 years later, and we see Jesse and his girlfriend Kate move into their new home. Kate is in fact played by La Park Lincoln, who is best known for playing Tina in Friday the 13th Part 7. That's the instalment with the telekinesis, so that's like quite an interesting fact, a nice link with one of my favourite franchises of all time. So Jesse and Kate settle into their new home, and they are then interrupted by Jesse's best friend Charlie and his girlfriend. They are a bit crazy party animals, and they kind of disrupt the peace a bit. There's also like a strange little subplot going on where it's to do with like a record producer and trying to get Charlie's girlfriend to be like the next Madonna. It's all very, very 80s, which is of course what we all love. So when Jesse researches the history of the house, he discovers it belonged to his great-great-grandfather, also named Jesse. Then he discovers about this mysterious skull. Now, this skull is amazing because it is basically what everybody is battling over in this movie, and the skull itself, no word of a lie, looks like something so like cheap and naff that you'd pick up off a fairground, but it's just brilliant, and I just think it just works well with the overall tone of the film, because as I'll go into this further, this film is absolutely silly, but it's great. So Then Jessie and Charlie go to dig up the great-great-grandfather, and he is, no word of a lie, a zombie cowboy. And this just sets up everything, the relationships, the whole family kind of atmosphere about the whole film has, and how about looking out for each other and all that kind of fun. So they hide the grandfather in the basement of the house, and then there's a Halloween party, and this is where the stories kind of intertwine. Jessie sees an old flame of his at the party, and she comes on to him. Then there's this like really shady man who's this record producer, and he starts to like stir things over, and then tells Kate what's going on. And at this point the grandfather decides to come up, have a few beers, have a dance, meet the guests, and it's all cool because everyone's in Halloween costume and they won't notice the difference that he is a cowboy zombie. So this is when events kick off. There's this sort of wrestler just turns up out of the blue, and he's fighting for the skull. He's come out of a different dimension, and then so the stories just intertwine at this point, and this is the point where everything just goes wacky and crazy, and it's just great. Also worth mentioning, because of course I mentioned him in the last video, Kane Hodder, and this is probably the Kane Hodder appreciation part of my review because I absolutely adore him. And he was stunt coordinator on the movie, and he also has a really, really brilliant moment in the Halloween party where he is literally dressed up as a gorilla. It is fantastic. I wouldn't call House 2 the second story a straight up horror movie. I mean, of course it has elements of the genre there, you know, it's the creepy house concept, there are monsters and all that kind of stuff. However, it is an absolute monster of genre hybridity. It's got it all. It's, you know, it's still very tongue-in-cheek, it's got the comedy there. It does take on the farcical elements of the original, the situations that the lead characters get themselves into in terms of trying to get this skull from all these different entities that are trying to take it for themselves. And then we've got the Western, because obviously the grandfather's a cowboy, and it's like got that part of the Wild West in it, and ultimately it is an adventure fantasy film. There's so many great effects in it, like as I said before, I love stop motion animation, and this one really utilises that. There is some fantastic set pieces, really elaborate, really, really good fun. There's even dinosaurs in this movie. Come on. And when you've got a pterodactyl stealing the skull after Jesse's retrieved it, and then he has to go up a massive tree, it's just all like really, really Saturday morning silly fun, just B-movie, low budget, but really, really great with its practical effects and stop motion animation once again. So great-great-grandfather Jesse had a feud with a really evil cowboy many, many decades ago, and that's why they're trying to protect the skull, because if he gets his hands on it, that is absolutely it. So he is the main villain of the movie, and he is the one that killed Jesse's parents at the beginning. So there's always the threat of him lurking, but before all that happens, they just go through these other dimensions. And as I said, there's the whole jungle bit with the dinosaurs, and then there is like a mummy's tomb and everything. There's an amazing scene with this electrician called Bill. That scene is probably like one of the highlights of the entire movie. It's just so well done. Interestingly, with House 2, the second story, it was reported that Sean S. Cunningham wanted to go for a more family-friendly approach rather than straight-up horror. And I was reading in Simon Barber's companion booklet that comes with the Arrow box set that that was the case, and that, as Barber says, it does have kind of goosebumps feel to it. And I totally agree there. I think this movie, it's not got loads of blood and guts flying out everywhere. The characters look so fantastical, and it just takes you back to that kind of Saturday morning fantasy kind of movie. But what interested me the most is the movie is rated a 15. I don't believe nowadays that that's a fair rating for it. I think 12 maybe at most, possibly a PG. I mean, apart from the end sequence, which involves some shooting. I won't spoil all that for you, but if you haven't seen the movie yet. But I think, yeah, maybe a 12A or something like that, because it's just fun. It's not really like nasty film in any way. All of it is tongues planted firmly in its cheek throughout. So here are my overall thoughts on House 2, the second story. If I'm going to compare it to the first one, I would say that I prefer the original so far in the franchise. It's my favourite out of these films. However, as a standalone movie, I think House 2 is really, really entertaining. It's so enjoyable. It's just one of those films that if you want something really easygoing to watch, it's got lots of fun to it, it's elaborate, it's crazy, it's wacky, it's all that stuff. And I think if you're just looking for something really, really light-hearted and fun, House 2, the second story is that movie. You don't necessarily have to see the first one to get the second one, which is pretty cool. I do like that they took a completely different approach with it. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review of House 2, the second story. I will be back with the third instalment, House 3, the horror show, that was released in 1989. I'm really looking forward to watching that one and seeing how different or maybe similar it is to the two other instalments. So yeah, thank you again. And if you follow me on Facebook, it's Hayley's Horror Reviews, and then Twitter, it's at Welsh Demon S, and Instagram, Miss Hayley R 1989. I will put all my links in the description box for you.